So, in lieu of the fact that Paul Thomas Anderson is back and making a movie, and made a movie, let's talk about one of my favorite aspects of PTA and his stuff. So, first of all, I was a little late to the party, as in, like, I was very much older when I realized that, like, I started paying attention to directors because I really was paying more attention to writers, and I was more focused on writers, like, for a very long time. But then I started to focus on writers like Guillermo del Toro, who were writer-directors, Martin McDonaugh. And then I started to acknowledge PTA's movies from a different perspective. And I was like, why are all these movies so good? What is, like, Magnolia and Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood and Phantom Thread? Like, what is it about these movies that's just so tantalizing? And I came up with a couple of reasons. I think what it really comes down to with his type of storytelling is this underlying need for communication and for family, or what we deem as family, or these kind of relationships. And this is really prevalent in Licorice Pizza. This is prevalent in Inherent Vice, in There Will Be Blood even, where the main character subconsciously is looking for that or needs that kind of community. Boogie Nights, probably the best example of, like, distracting ourselves and trying to find our community and to just be accepted when we're not being accepted by those who are our loved ones or those who have the same blood as us. And I think that he is able to take these massive plots that have absolutely fuck all to do with kind of community, and then at some point it becomes really prevalent that that's actually what the story is about. So with Boogie Nights, one of my absolute favorites, first of all, he was 26 when this came out, and it must be nice to be a young white guy and be trusted not only with this script off the bat, but then to show up with Burt Reynolds, Mark Wahlberg, Julianne Moore, John C. Reilly, Philip Seymour Hoffman, just to name a few. Heather Graham, oh, Roller Girl, for sure. So you get trusted with this script, and it's the most bizarre story about a guy who wants to be a porn star, and not only that, but a guy who wants to make porn better on the story, like tell good stories. And what is that to begin with? It's fun, it's funky, the visuals are amazing, the dialogue is great, but there's heart, so much heart in Boogie Nights that I think is easy to kind of look past because there's so much chaotic drama going on. But all of these people have that in common, is they need some sort of family. And this can be seen, like, really well through the eyes of Julianne Moore, who has no longer is in a relationship, like, has a communication with her son. But there's this need in her to be a mother figure, to be able to be something to somebody. And with Mark Wahlberg's character, we see this. He has a terrible relationship with his mother, and the two, Julianne Moore and his character, then tend to cling to one another in a sort of subconscious way, that he needs a mother and she needs a child. And I think that is also then prevalent in There Will Be Blood, where Daniel Plainview, probably the most antisocial or, like, disinterested in person in creating communication, when he does have an opportunity and someone is brought into his life, that seems to switch up, whether he seems to notice it or not. And when it doesn't go to plan, it leaves him very upset and hurt, and can be kind of seen as a slight catalyst to the not going, like, the never turning back of Daniel Plainview, to the I'm evil now and there really is no hope. And I think I failed to mention that now I'm talking about There Will Be Blood when I talk about Daniel Plainview. But it's the exact same thing that happens in Boogie Nights, when there ends up being a conflict and Mark Wahlberg's character ends up in a situation where he is lonely. We see how misguided he becomes and how much hopelessness bleeds into him. And this is something that doesn't define the plot, but it defines the way that the characters interact with the plot. And when we get these climatic moments, which PTA is just so good at and so known for, we feel like it's extra justified. And maybe we don't even know why it's justified, but we've been watching these characters, their slow, like, their thoughts and how they've changed once they found themselves a community, and then what happens when that community feels like it's been taken away from them. This is incredibly highlighted in Boogie Nights. Every character shows the different variants to what happens when you feel alone. So when we look at the intention and the purpose of these antagonists, Thomas Anderson applies the most vital and important part about creating these antagonists, and that is finding one thing, just one thing, that humanizes them or reminds us that they are a creature, a being, a human who does have feelings. This doesn't need to happen more than once, to be honest. We don't need the intention of characters like Daniel Plainview from There Will Be Blood is not to sort of agree with him, but to understand that throughout this journey, he has validated for himself why he is the way that he is. And it's not an easy feat to do. We tend to immediately overcompensate and become massive fans of the underdog, let's say like in Joker. And while that is effective for the plot of Joker, it's important that with a character like Daniel Plainview, who is so innately becoming more evil and is embracing this evil life, we need to respect the fact that that's why. And this becomes most prevalent in the nuance that PTA uses in Boogie Nights. In There Will Be Blood, it's extremely focused on the journey of Plainview. But in Boogie Nights, there are no direct antagonists. Everybody has antagonistic perspectives and traits, and everybody comes in with a personality that is already broken, misguided. Since we are all, the idea that everybody here has joined the porn industry is used as an example of resorting to something because you feel misguided, alone, because you feel like you have no alternatives, or and that's individually explored through the different characters, through Roller Girl and her journey of being objectified and feeling like she doesn't fit in, Julianne Moore's character feeling like she has lost this big part of her, this parenthood, Mark Wahlberg feeling like he doesn't have a family figure, that his family judges him and that his personality isn't worth accepting. So going into the story, we already have a basis of, oh, these characters are at their lowest. How are they going to improve? And we are happy when they do improve. But we're also not surprised when something, a catalyst comes in and dismantles all of this, because these characters haven't verbally admitted to their issues, to their problems. And they, as much as they built this tight-knit community, as soon as anything disrupts it, they all go radio silent, or they act out. And this is more nuanced. This is more realistic. This is taking this fantastical world, something that a lot of us will never be able to relate to, and rightfully so, well, good for that, and saying, but there is still heart. There is still something behind it. These people want something. They have creativity. They have desire. They have agency. They just don't have the tools to be able to execute that without running away or without perpetuating their past experiences, their past actions, and without having the proper tools to be able to defend themselves as an individual and not as a collective. So what is PTA doing? He's saying, I can do both. I can tell a story that's entertaining, that's interesting, that has a lot of detail, a lot of things to look at, and I can also be realistic about people. And I think he understands humanity and people on a really deep level, on a level that is often takes a step back and is implied, but sometimes it's nice to actually watch the journey of the people and realize that this big fancy disco hippie kind of lifestyle that they're living is merely a backdrop and an energy that helps the characters, like that the characters can feed off of or reject and go against. This energy is his stories are not about the plot. They are perfectly masked as that way, but using and implementing this human aspect, we don't realize that it's enriched the story in a way that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And there's no rush. There's no need to push out content just because you can, just because the industry is offering you space and giving you this opportunity, just as it does with other directors that are hot at the moment or have proven themselves to be good at telling stories, and so much so that we can get good casts involved. There's not this rush, and that is most prevalent in directors such as Guillermo del Toro and Martin McDonaugh and Paul Thomas Anderson. They are not in a rush. They would rather sit and focus on a story for a very long time. And this is even prevalent with Scorsese. We're not getting movies from him every 2 years like we are from Yorgos. And I don't mind that. Yorgos is a great director. This does not negate the skill of the director to be able to push out more content. But it's not necessary. And the best stories are the ones that took really long. The best stories of these three directors that I just mentioned prior are ones that came when they were necessary and when the director felt they were ready. And I'll even mention that this is something that Tarantino does as well. He could be popping up movies all the time. He's got amazing ideas, as much as I have a love-hate relationship with him. But when he takes his time and gives us space in between, we really enjoy his work. We really feel like he spent dedicated time on this, that he wasn't just saying, all right, I'm done now. He spent as long as he felt was necessary until the art was complete. And that is something that most directors that are writers as well manage to execute perfectly. And I know I'm generalizing a lot. I know there's a lot of directors that aren't like happening, on around all the time. But this is one of my favorite aspects of directors like Paul Thomas Anderson, is this pursuit to tell a story correctly and in a way that enriches us as the viewer, not just when we watch it, but going forward and makes us think about it. And I mean, look at Scorsese. Scorsese is known to have spent 10 years writing The Irishman. He's known to leave big gaps. When Killers of the Flower Moon came out, it's already been like 3+ years, and we're only getting another movie from him now. This is the kind of directing and writing that really appeals to me. We are not in a rush. Just because I can do it doesn't mean I'm going to. Doesn't mean I'm going to use all of these resources just to pump out something that is going to be entertaining, is going to be good, but is going to maybe be lost in the filmography of this director overall. The ones that take their time and pace things really make a difference. The gap of time between McDonough's sort of Seven Psychopaths and then In Bruges it's perfect. We feel so excited when a director like PTA, Mark McDonaugh, Del Toro finally makes. So I suppose all my rambling is to say is that it's the longer route to take more time. But just as musicians and painters don't complete their pieces just overnight, and there is a rollout, there should be a rollout for storytelling as well. And to keep this industry from being super condensed with just similar directors repeatedly pumping out stuff because they've got the funding, because they've got the credential, they've got the reputation, and because people are wanting to work with them, is something that just bothers me. And I think that the other moral of the story is that Paul Thomas Anderson excels not because he is able to create these epic, large scenes, stories, sets, but because he keeps the same underlying base in mind for all of his stories: community, having people, understanding one another. Humanity is vital to tell these stories and dictates how these stories are going to end. Community is where it's at. Family is where it's at. Not just family, but the family that we create for ourselves, how we see ourselves in the world, but also how other people see us. We can rely on the reference of other people to reassure and re-evaluate how we are, who we are, and what's actually bothering us. And this is really hard and a difficult journey, and often ends with the characters taking steps back. And in PTA stories, he's not about redeeming certain characters just because they have new perspective. He allows the characters to be stuck in their own places. He allows them to move as they are. They feel realistic. It feels like he has let the characters take over and tell the story. Directors and storytellers who can do that are definitely up in my favorites. And actually looking back at what movies have stuck with me, what movies end up in my top 20, this is something that a lot of them have in common, is this humanity, this need to be understood, and not even accepted for that, but to just be understood. So the recommendation for today is obviously Boogie Nights. There Will Be Blood. I'm sure you've seen it already though.